So I have been running my business for over 10 years now, and I've learned quite a lot about product launches and how to have a successful product launch. And we've actually sold out of many of our products several times now over the years here at Katnipp. In fact, this year alone, we've had some of our best sellout launches we have ever done. We've sold hundreds of products within minutes, and to be honest, it absolutely blows my mind because when I started Katnipp, I could only dream of having product launches like this. So what I've actually done is I've sat down and I've actually wrote down everything I've learned over 10 years and how I developed as an artist and as a small business owner and how I began to change my product launches. So hopefully if you're just starting out or you're deeper into it and you want to learn how to structure it better, you can learn from me and my experience that I've garnered over the last 10 years. A huge thank you to Shopify for sponsoring today's video. More on them later. I've decided to do a little series like this where I really deep dive into my 10 years in business and what I've learned so far. So if you ever have any questions, let me know in the comments below. I think I'm going to call this series Coffee with Katnipp. It's going to be a place where I share my business experience and what I've learned as an artist, an illustrator, a small business owner and a creative in the online space. Welcome to episode 1 of Coffee with Katnipp. Let's get into it, shall we? So when I first ever started out at Katnipp, I didn't have an audience, and most people will start like this. You don't have customers or a fan base unless you're a YouTuber or have a social media presence already. You're already ahead of the game and then you're turning it into a small business. But when I started out, I didn't have any social media presence at all. I was a small business and I was selling predominantly custom portraits through Facebook. I knew I needed to get the word of mouth out there and I needed people to find my small business. If you want to know the exact roots of how I started, I have actually got a video on this channel where I talk about my journey into creating my business. And personally, what I used to do when I first had my products was I would just experiment and upload them and then be like, oh, this is a new product, it's been added to my store, and I would just add new products in dribs and drabs. So I invested in a heat press, a mug press, I learned about sublimation, I created my own sublimated printer. I was still developing my style and my brand as an artist and who I was. So this was a really experimental phase for me, and I would just create loads of different designs, but I would print on demand. So I'd print them in my small studios when I sold the product, which meant I had a lot of flexibility actually because I was a handmade business and I made everything in-house, which is drastically different to how we ended up developing here at Katnipp, but that's how I first started out. Basically what I would do is I would design a product, I would see what was trending on the marketplace, see what people were wanting on the marketplace. So predominantly what I would search is the gift market. How could I infiltrate the gift market? The use of like personalized mugs, for example. So I was selling a mix of all sorts of different things, from mugs that were personalized, that were already popular and selling, but then making it in my own Katnipp style. And I would really rely on SEO, which is search engine optimization, to get found. So I'd do these product launches, I'd share them on my Instagram that had a very small following at the time, and on Facebook. Basically rely on SEO to get my Etsy store up to a lot of products, because obviously the more products you've got and the more you can hit SEO, the more chance you've got of being found on search or on the web. So I wanted to increase my product inventory so I had more opportunity to get found. And what I used to find as well is I used to research all the top Etsy shops, because I did start just on Etsy and I had an Etsy store for years before I had my own website. I always had my own website at katnipp.com, but it wasn't an e-commerce website. It was more of a portfolio and the products would link back to my Etsy, and that's how I did it originally when I first started. Just rely on SEO to get found. Obviously I would have a mug machine, I'd do loads of different designs, and I would print one mug or even make a mock-up because I didn't want to waste any money on printing a mug, because money was tight during those times and one mug was a lot of money to me. It was like £1.50 to buy that mug, then print it, then use the inks, and then it could potentially not print right. So I sometimes would use mock-ups as well for my photos, and I would just drop a product as soon as I got inspiration or looked online at what was trending, and I would just randomly add them to the site, sometimes multiple a week, sometimes a month, just to build up my product inventory to get found before Katnipp became like a brand with an audience. So that's how I originally started with product launches or product releases and product drops. I had no plan of how to do collections or how to do launches, which is what I eventually got into in the end. And this is something that I learned over time, which brings me to my first sellout product, which is when I had to start structuring my launches a little bit better. as I was kind of doing these experiments with products, and I was doing custom portraits, and I was developing new products with characters on, because I wanted to eventually become a character brand, which is what I am today, but at the time I wasn't one of them. I was more of a gifted brand with a cute kawaii twist with it, and my style wasn't completely refined back then. While I was doing these product drops, I was also marketing myself and sharing my story on Instagram. I began growing on Instagram, and I had my first ever studio space, and then I started to also document it on YouTube and really selling my products and what I was doing, how I was developing my products online, and I kind of garnered a small audience. And then we had our first ever sellout product, which is something I was not expecting, and it was my first experience of a sellout product actually, and that was when one of my studio vlogs went viral. It still is my most popular video to this day, and I remember I made and cut my own stickers using Pudding the dog, and I realised the reason that these sold so well is people could actually see the artistic process and the design process that went behind developing this product. I feel like that is what makes these products sell out. So the audience was watching me have this idea, sketching it out, developing this product, printing the product, and then packaging it to the customer, and I was creating this video on YouTube, and that is why I think the first one sold out. So it wasn't from SEO or anything like that, it was because I'd kind of unintentionally built hype because I was documenting what I was actually doing here at Katnipp, because I was documenting the behind the scenes process, and I think that really connected with people, because even when I fall in love with a product and I really want to buy something, it's because I've watched the story of it develop, or I really love that brand in general and what that brand stands for. So I think that's what kind of happened there. And then I had another sellout product, which was my enamel pins. This was in the same sort of year with Gingy. He was the first time he had come to Katnipp, and the first time a character had really sold out, my gingerbread pin, and I sold out of 100 really fast. I think it was in 24 hours, which was fast at the time for me because I didn't have a huge fan base or anything at the time, but it was starting to slowly build. And this was my first experience of a character product really kind of selling out, and then with that came the customer disappointment as well, and people being really gutted that they missed out because I'd just said, oh look, we're live. I didn't give like a time or a date, I just published it and said this is in stock, and then it sold out of stock, and people were like, oh, I would have liked to have known when this was coming in stock so I wouldn't miss out, and I could set an alarm because I really wanted this pin. And then that was kind of a wake-up call to me to think, actually these items that could potentially sell out, because I didn't need to do this with my things that were handmade because I could just keep making them, but things that got manufactured outside of Katnipp, I knew that they could potentially sell out, so needed a time frame. And this is what I started to slowly incorporate into my brand going forward because of this constantly selling out. And I remember restocking 50 again and it's selling out again. Then I thought, right, I need to like do some timed launches, or at least listen to my customer feedback, and they were saying, please can you do a time and tell me the date and the launch it's going to be live, so I can put a note in my phone and I can be on your website, and then at least it's fair to try and get one while I can and I know when it's going live, rather than just suddenly seeing a post and it's already been live for like 5 days and I've missed it. So then I thought, okay, I need to start incorporating this into my brand. So I didn't ever need to do that before because obviously I wasn't big enough yet, or I didn't have an audience, and I wasn't selling out, so it wasn't an issue. I would just buy this product in and I would market it after the fact. People were seeing the process of me creating these items and then looking forward to them being released because they could see the process of it. So that leads me into finally starting to do timed launches, and it also goes in hand in hand with seasonal launches as well. One thing you'll see in basically any business ever, when it's a product-based business, they normally run on seasons, especially brands that I know and love and that I often model Katnipp off, like Sanrio, Disney. They work seasonally, and a lot of these brands actually work years in advance. I am not that good, but I did start getting a little bit better at this, to be honest. So you want to be at least a season ahead. So for Halloween, for example, launching in August August and is probably the ideal time because people are already starting to buy for Halloween and Christmas actually. People are quite prepared and start buying for Christmas, especially online during these times, and this is what I noticed here at Katnipp. I was actually personally very terrible at this because I found it quite difficult to create products in a season when I wasn't feeling inspired because I was enjoying that season for the following season. And I realised over the years, because I was releasing my product launches too late in the season, I was leaving a lot of money on the table, and I was also disappointing a lot of my customers because the time had already been and gone. In fact, I'll tell you a story. There was one time I did a seasonal Halloween launch and I did it in the middle of October. Now, a lot of my audience base are in America and they want to enjoy the Halloween season throughout October. So really, my Halloween stuff should have been released in August or September to get there in time for October so they could then enjoy the product. And I realised I can't keep doing this and just working within the season, because originally I would just develop a product within that season, and because it was handmade, it wouldn't be that much of an issue. I'd do the product in that season, I'd release it within that season, but it was too late. People are already searching for the next season, for spring or summer, and I realised that quite early on actually, but it took me like 4 to 5 to 6 years to start planning seasons ahead. And even now I'm not very good at it, to be honest, because it is hard as a creative to think seasons in advance. And if you look at really big businesses, they actually plan, say Christmas for example, they'll work in that season for Christmas for the following Christmas. That would probably be, to be honest, the best way of actually doing it. I feel like small businesses have the upper hand here over the big brands because that means they can also take advantage of trends that are going on at the time, which actually is a detriment to big brands, is how long it takes them to get product out, which often means they miss really great trends, which us smaller businesses can often capitalize on because we have smaller inventory and a quicker time frame. So you really have to be working a season ahead, particularly if you are buying product in, and this is something you have to bear in mind. So the reason I started working a season and sometimes 2 seasons ahead is because the products take at least 6 weeks to manufacture, and then obviously we have to develop the product, we have to get samples or ideas and tweak the product when we send it to the manufacturer. Then the product has to then get made and shipped to us, and then we have to get like the packaging all done, then photographing it and then putting it up, and it needs to go ahead of the season. So that's what I learned, and I learned that as I started incorporating this and working a season or 2 ahead, I realised it was really beneficial to my business, and I did notice a lot more sales, a lot more people waiting for the next collection. As I was building Katnipp, more fans were coming to it. They were anticipating the next season rather than me just going, oh, here's Halloween, there you go, there's a launch, woo, and then they're like, oh wait, what? You can do surprise drops, that does work as well, but for me personally, I have done surprise drops where I do marketing like 3 to 4 days in advance, but you have to have an audience behind you, I feel like, to get to that point. You're relying more on SEO, getting found. You want to be a season ahead for when people are searching for Halloween, for Christmas. You want products on there so that potential new customers will find you whilst they're searching for that. For me now, I can do more surprise drops, like, ooh, we've got a plushie coming, surprise, and then I'll drop it and I'll release it because I have got an audience now, and we have a lot of Katnipp collectors who now collect Katnipp goodies and stuff. So just bear that in mind. Work a season or 2 ahead is really crucial, especially if you haven't got a huge audience base and you want to make sure you're getting in there when people are searching for those items. But then I also wrote down some best launch practices that I actually started applying, and I didn't plan this, it just slowly happened over time in Katnipp to make things smoother, because we did have some launches that were a bit of a nightmare, and we still do have that happening. So for me, having a good website was crucial, and my game was totally elevated when I got my own e-commerce website at katnipp.com, because I'd already built up an audience here on YouTube YouTube, and to be honest, I should have done this years ago rather than just using Etsy. Etsy was a great way for me to get found, to be honest, through SEO and getting a new audience, but I'd already started to build my own audience and social media marketing, and I do feel like I left it too long to get my own e-commerce website. When I finally did with Shopify, who very, very kindly partnered up with this video, so a huge thank you to Shopify, it's actually perfect. When I finally used them to power my small business, Katnipp.com, that was a game changer, I will say. Number one being the navigation and the collections on my page. One thing I found really, really tricky using other platforms is the navigation was rubbish. Now I could have full collections, a banner on my website about that fresh new drop, and it would all be in order. Everything would be super easy for the fans of Katnipp to navigate with. Very, very crucial that your navigation is smooth and simple, easy to find, because if it's not, your customer's going to click off and then you've potentially lost a sale. Number two was website loading speed. You do not want a slow and janky website. One thing I actually really love and appreciate about Shopify is the fact that it actually has your loading speed. Another thing is being able to switch from desktop to mobile. A lot of people shop on mobile because I do a lot of my marketing on Instagram and YouTube, so making sure that your mobile setup is equally as beautiful and quick to navigate as your desktop is crucial as well. Another thing that is super important and one of the best launch practices is making sure that you've got a really fast and easy checkout. One thing again, love about Shopify, how fast and easy the checkout is. We had a launch before when we were closing the studios, when we were doing our mega boxes. We sold out in under a minute. That's how fast the checkout cart was, and we literally sold out of hundreds of products in less than a minute. That was insane. That was an insane launch. I still can't believe that happened now, to be honest. That has been so crucial. Shopify has been incredible. Honestly, highly recommend it. I absolutely love using Shopify to power my small business. If you guys want to check it out, I will leave a link in my description. It's really elevated the game. It also made my brand look a lot more professional. We have noticed actually a huge difference in our product launches, and not only that, it's actually really fun to see where you guys are on the map, how many active customers are on the map. I never had that before. I never had tools that could access that, and it's super exciting because I can also document it and share it with you guys about who's been where you are across the world, where you're checking out. Huge thank you to Shopify for partnering up with this video. It's absolutely perfect. Another thing I wanted to talk about is things to consider to make your launch extra special or extra valuable to the customer, and kind of give them the sense of urgency to want to purchase in that launch. And these are two things that I've actually noticed that work really well here at Katnipp. Number one is actually mystery boxes and blind boxes. These have been around for ages, for years and years, but I do feel like they've really become a huge trend in the last couple of years. And when I go to conventions and when I go to Japan, these are absolutely huge. Look at Pop Mart, their blind boxes fly off the shelves. And I think if you can incorporate some sort of blind box or mystery box within a product collection, I think this can be a really cool way of introducing a new product. If you have got kind of a character-based product like me, if you haven't got a character-based product where that would be suitable, you could do things like limited artist runs and releases. So you could launch, for example, 50 limited edition prints, or just 10 limited edition prints, only 10 in the world that are signed, for example. A limited artist run gives the customer an excuse and a chance to have something special, and they feel part of the community. They get to have something that only them and 10 other people or 80 other people have in the world. I think that is like a really nice way to add exclusivity or a limited exclusive release if you're an artist or something like that. Consider how you could add that to your store, especially if you've got an audience. I would say this is more audience based, but mystery bags and blind bags do well even on Etsy if you look at stickers, blind bag stickers, but I do feel like they do a little bit better if you do have an audience base behind you as well. But it is very popular. People don't know what they want to purchase, especially if you're an artist and maybe don't know what they want to purchase, and having a blind box gives them, it takes away that decision, and they get to just get something fun and they get to see what they're going to open. It's really exciting for them. So it also brings me into my next point, which is you can't often tell what's going to sell out. We have a running joke here at Katnipp where I will develop a product and I think it's going to be a bestseller, and then it doesn't sell at all and it flops, and the thing that I don't think is going to sell well ends up being a bestseller. But the most crucial thing to do is experiment with different products. For me, I slowly built this up over 10 years. This isn't something that happens overnight, and I listened to what the customer wants, and I also seen what characters worked better as I started to introduce characters. For example, Bumblebutt, who's now officially trademarked, and he's right here. You guys are the ones who have made him the popular character, and I listen to you guys, and I'm always trying to improve, tell his story, and then listen to really what your customers and your audience wants, and have a look what products have worked really well and how you could develop them into more products. For me, I knew I wanted to be a character brand, and I wanted to have my own little mini Yorkshire version of like Sanrio, Hello Kitty, Beatrix Potter kind of thing, and that is what I'm currently in the process of doing. So obviously picking characters that your customers love, and then also telling the stories about the characters. Just because it didn't sell out straight away doesn't necessarily mean they're a flop. It means that they weren't marketed well enough. Don't always have to have a sellout either. It is hard to navigate, but you do listen to your customers, and I do think you get better as you're developing products. But sometimes it is just experimentation, and it is risk taking. That's what business is. Sometimes you put some money into a product and you don't actually know if it's going to sell or not. But what I've found is I've actually now, since I've released my studios, I've now switched over to a pre-order model, which could be a great thing, especially if you're a smaller artist and you don't have the funds to fork out £10,000 on some plushies to come in. Well, you can do Kickstarters or pre-orders. This is what a lot of my small business friends do, and they're very successful with it. And then you can market that and get it crowdfunded. And also, if you have bought a load of product in and it's not selling and it hasn't sold out straight away, think of a new marketing strategy and a plan to get that product out there and start marketing it on social media. For me, I never planned to have sell-out products. What my goal originally for Katnipp was to keep adding products to the store so I could get found globally, and the more products, the more chances of getting found. And my plan was always to keep certain items stocked on the shelves, like my stickers were always in stock, and then there would be certain stock like plushies and limited runs that would sell out. Some things really surprised and shocked me. I remember my Sakura collection, when I started doing actual collection-based seasonal products where I would release a bunch of different seasonal products at the time. Those sold out, which was crazy because we ordered a lot in and I wasn't planning on them selling out. I was planning on having them on the stock and then doing a marketing campaign after we'd launched it. I knew we'd have quite a few after our product launch because we'd built up an audience, but I did plan on slowly marketing them over the course of the season to sell them, but that didn't happen. We ended up selling them out. So you can't plan for what is or isn't going to sell out. Sometimes things are a flop. Don't beat yourself up about it if they are, because it happens to everyone. Not everything sells out. And when I started, I didn't even have sell-out products. I would just launch a product. No one knew who I was yet, and it is all just marketing, to be honest. It's about building that community and that brand voice, which actually brings me on to my end notes. Your shop launches do not have to start with these huge product collections. In fact, I would actually advise against that. That's not how I started. I do think a lot of people come to this channel because I've documented this since starting, so you can actually go and watch how I used to develop and launch a product and model my business on like a smaller scale of other businesses I look up to that are bigger brands. Like, if you're anything like me and you don't have the funds and resources or the social proof to see if your products are going to work, the best thing to do is just experiment and release drops and products. And then when your brand starts getting known a little bit more, that's when I would start focusing on themed collections, seasons, and then putting a date and also working on limited runs and getting some hype around your product launches. So you really need to like market and build the hype. With me, marketing and building the hype was actually through documenting me developing the products. And this was actually unintentional originally, but naturally became because I'm documenting my journey as a business owner. I'd be filming me designing these products on this channel and on Instagram, showing the sketches, showing the process, and then people got excited for it. So then when I mentioned when the launch was going to go live, they knew when it was going to go live, and they had a kind of backlog of marketing built up before the launch. You can't just launch a product and expect people to just snap it up unless you're a very established brand, like I say, and you've done these special limited drops for 24 hours only and stuff like that. Even if you just have 1,000 followers, that's sometimes enough to do a successful small product drop, and you don't need thousands and thousands and thousands of followers for it to be successful. In fact, if you're a smaller artist with a small base, first experiment with products and get found on SEO while you have zero audience, and then start your storytelling, marketing, and growing on socials so people know who you are. Start trying to grow. But even if you only have like 500 to 600 followers, that's still a lot of people, and you can still do product drops with a small audience and it worked very successfully. On an end note, one thing I will say is don't get so caught up with looking like you've sold out and stuff like that. I think people see like my YouTube videos and Instagram and stuff like that and see that I'm selling out. This wasn't the case. Like, this only really started happening within the last like 3 years. Remember, I have been doing this for 10 years, and it took me around 7 years to really start seeing like proper sellout products where within like 10 to 15 minutes. That never used to happen before. It took me a long time to get to this point, and it was slowly building my audience over this 10 years to get to this point. So if you are a smaller artist, please don't be discouraged, and definitely don't compare yourself to other artists who have been in that trap before, and it's not healthy. I do hope you learned something from it. Please let me know in the comments if you do want to have more Coffee with Katnipp chats about what I've learned over the last 10 years growing Katnipp. Let me know in the comments below what else you would like me to deep dive into and chat about, and I'll be sure to film it for you. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one. Alright then, thank you so much for watching. I love you.